It was a night thick with rain. Not the gentle kind that lulled you to sleep, but a violent, slashing storm that pounded the earth like a beast venting its fury. Thunder grumbled constantly, as though the sky itself was muttering warnings. The streets of the small mountain town of Elmridge shimmered under the storm's wrath. Rivers forming along sidewalks, streetlights flickering behind curtains of water. Inside a modest countryside cottage at the edge of the woods, Clara Mitchell, 29, sat curled on her navy blue couch, a warm woolen blanket pulled up to her chin. The lamp on the end table cast a dim amber glow over the room, its weak light barely holding back the encroaching shadows. She nursed a cup of chamomile tea with shaking hands, trying to calm herself more than she cared to admit. Her husband, Jason, had left early that morning for a work trip to Denver. The house, nestled at the edge of Elmridge's forest border, was peaceful most nights. The kind of peaceful that made city people nervous. But not Clara. She had grown to love the quiet. Until tonight. There was something about this storm that made the silence in between thunderclaps feel threatening. Something about how the trees bent and moaned beneath the wind like they were trying to whisper secrets. Something about the electric tension in the air, like the sky was holding its breath. She shifted on the couch, trying to focus on the book she had been reading, but the words swam uselessly before her eyes. Her tea had gone lukewarm. She glanced at the clock. 31 a.m. She sighed and stood, stretching her back. Maybe she'd try to sleep. Then came the knock. Soft. Light. As if made with a gloved hand. She froze mid-step, heart thudding in her chest. Her breath caught. The sound wasn't violent or hurried. It was almost gentle. Almost courteous. But that's what made it worse. Because no one knocks politely on a stranger's door in the middle of the night. Not in a storm like this. Not out here. She moved slowly to the front door, her bare feet silent against the hardwood floor. The knock didn't come again, but she swore she could hear something just beyond the door. Breathing? Shifting weight? She pressed her eye to the peephole. Nothing. The porch was empty, the driveway slick and dark. No vehicle, no figure. Nothing but the rain cascading from the roof, splashing in frantic rhythm against the wood. Her fingers hovered over the doorknob. A part of her wanted to open it anyway. Maybe someone needed help. Maybe it was a mistake. But her instinct screamed no. Still, curiosity pried her fingers into motion. She unlocked the bolt slowly, heart hammering, and pulled the door open a crack. Nothing but the wet hiss of rain. She opened it wider, looked around, even stepped onto the porch. Not a soul in sight. The wind gusted hard, blowing her damp hair into her eyes. She squinted out into the night. No footsteps, no voice, no indication that anyone had been there. With a cold chill running down her back, she stepped inside quickly and locked the door again. She leaned against it, trying to still her heartbeat. And then, knock, knock, knock. She flinched, spinning toward the kitchen. It had come from the back door. Clara's breath caught in her throat. The knock at the back door hadn't been soft like the first. It was sharper, firmer. 3 distinct raps, confident, as if whoever stood there knew she was home. She remained frozen for a second, listening. The ticking of the old wall clock above the fireplace now sounded like a drum beat. Outside, the rain continued its furious symphony, wind wailing against the windows like a wounded animal trying to get in. She took one cautious step toward the kitchen. The house creaked. Another knock, this time even louder. Her instinct screamed again, but curiosity had already taken hold. She moved carefully through the hallway, past the pictures of her and Jason smiling on sunny days, a stark contrast to the thick dread that now filled the air. Her feet made no sound on the cold tiles of the kitchen floor, but her every movement felt amplified, each breath, each heartbeat thudding in her ears. She reached the back door. Unlike the front, this one had no peephole. She hesitated, her hand inches from the knob. A voice inside her head whispered, "You didn't lock it earlier." A horrible sinking sensation formed in her gut. She reached down and tested it. The knob turned freely. She gasped and backed away, trembling. Whoever was out there could have come in, but they didn't. Why? Was it a game? A clap of thunder boomed so close it made the lights flicker. In that flash of light, for a single second, her eyes caught something outside through the door's thin, vertical window pane. A silhouette. Slender. Still, inches from the door. Head tilted. She didn't scream, but her knees went weak. The power went out. A heavy silence settled over the house, broken only by the relentless rain and the distant rumble of thunder rolling through the mountains. Clara stood paralyzed in the darkness. Her hand found the counter. She fumbled toward the drawer where they kept the flashlight, yanked it open with shaking fingers. She flicked the flashlight on and turned it toward the window. Empty. The silhouette was gone. Her throat was dry. "Hello?" she whispered, hating how weak her voice sounded. "Is someone there?" No answer. But just as she turned to step back, a wet, smeared handprint slid slowly down the outside of the window. She stumbled away from the door, her back hitting the kitchen table. Her flashlight trembled in her grip. She needed to call someone, the police, Jason, anyone. She ran to the living room, snatched her phone from the coffee table. No signal. Of course. The storm, the remote location. It was a perfect trap. She backed toward the fireplace, trying to think. Could she drive into town? No. The roads were probably flooded, and she didn't want to step outside, not with whatever that was out there. The flashlight dimmed. She shook it. The beam flickered and returned, weaker this time. Then she heard something upstairs. Not footsteps, at least not normal ones. It was more like something dragging across the wooden floor. A low, drawn-out scrape. Clara's heart threatened to burst from her chest. She lived alone. No one else should be upstairs. She tightened her grip on the flashlight and moved slowly toward the staircase, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The dragging sound stopped as she reached the first step. And then, thud. Something heavy hit the floor above her. Her flashlight flickered again. She looked up into the dark hallway at the top of the stairs and whispered to no one. "Who's in my house?" No answer. But the silence, it felt like something was holding its breath, waiting. Clara stood at the base of the staircase, her flashlight casting a dim, jittery glow upward. The old wooden steps looked darker now, the shadows swallowing their edges. The dragging sound had stopped, but her ears strained in the silence, trying to catch any movement above. Thud. Another heavy sound, closer to the top of the stairs now. It was as if something, or someone, was walking across the hallway with weightless feet, and then dropping suddenly like collapsing between each step. Clara's fingers clenched around the flashlight so tightly they ached. Her mouth was dry, but she swallowed hard and took a cautious step onto the staircase. The wood creaked beneath her. She paused. Silence. Then, creak. One step above. Just one. Clara froze. She wasn't moving. Neither was the house. Something else was on the staircase. She raised the flashlight and pointed it up. The beam trembled, faint and unsteady, casting long, spindly shadows on the walls. Nothing was visible beyond the third step. She took another step, breath hitching in her throat. Drip. A droplet hit her arm. She flinched and looked up. Another drip. From the ceiling. No. The landing. Water. Her heart thundered as she realized the floor above her was wet. It wasn't raining inside, but there was a steady trail of water slowly winding down the stairs, as if something soaked had just walked there, or was still standing above. She reached the top, flashlight beam scanning the dark hallway. Doors lined the corridor, all shut, except one. The bathroom door. It was open, not wide, just enough to show that the light inside was flickering weakly, like the last breath of a candle. Water ran from inside, pooling into the hallway. Clara took a step toward it. Creak. The floor responded under her foot like it was sighing under pressure. She reached the doorway, every nerve in her body screaming not to look. But she did. The bathroom mirror was fogged up, impossibly so. like someone had been breathing on it for hours. The faucet was running, the sink filled to the brim. Water spilled over the edges, and on the floor, bare footprints, small, soaked, and oddly spaced, like they had been made by someone walking backwards. But there was no one inside. She turned off the tap, but the water kept trickling for a few seconds after, as though resisting. Then, the mirror cleared. Just enough for her to see her own reflection, except it wasn't quite her. The version of Clara in the mirror stood motionless. Her face was pale, her eyes far too wide, and her mouth was open, not in surprise, but in a silent scream. Clara gasped, stepping back. The reflection didn't move. She swung the flashlight away, only to catch a glimpse of something in her peripheral vision, a figure standing behind her in the hallway. She spun, light cutting through the dark. Nothing. Empty hallway. She looked back at the mirror. Her reflection was gone. Gone. The mirror was blank, just her flashlight beam bouncing back. The floor creaked again behind her. No. This time it wasn't behind her. It was above her. From the attic. Clara's heart nearly gave out. She never used the attic. It was just a crawl space with boxes and dust. There was no way anyone should be up there, unless they had come down first. She slowly backed out of the bathroom, eyes locked on the ceiling where the attic door was shut, tightly, with the pull string swaying slightly in an unseen breeze. She turned toward the staircase, intent on leaving, but a wet handprint appeared on the wall beside her. Fresh, dripping. Then another, and another, trailing down the hallway toward the attic. Clara didn't wait. She ran, down the stairs, through the dark, toward the front door. Her breath was loud, ragged. She grabbed the handle, locked. She twisted it, yanked it. The key wasn't in the door. She had left it on the kitchen table earlier. She turned and saw it. A figure standing at the top of the staircase, drenched, head down, hair covering the face. Unmoving, water began to pool at its feet. Clara stepped back, shaking. The lights flickered once, and went out completely. The cottage was now swallowed in pitch-black darkness. Clara stood frozen at the front door, her trembling hand still on the handle. The flashlight had flickered out. All she had left was the rhythmic pounding of the rain on the roof and the creaking of soaked floorboards behind her. And the memory of what she saw at the top of the stairs. That figure. That thing. Drenched. Head bowed. Motionless. She dared to look again. Nothing. It was gone. But the wet footsteps had moved. Trailing down the stairs, one by one. Clara backed into the kitchen, blindly feeling the countertop until her fingers brushed the cold metal of the keys. She snatched them up, but dropped them immediately when she felt something wet and slimy already coating the keys. She recoiled in disgust and fear. The kitchen light sputtered suddenly. Once, twice, then turned on fully, for only a second. And, in that second, the figure was standing at the window, staring in. But the outside porch light wasn't on. The figure wasn't lit. There was no way she should have seen it clearly. And yet, she had. Its face was now partially visible. Pale, blistered. Mouth agape in a permanent, unnatural smile. The lips were torn as if they'd been forced open, revealing broken, blackened teeth. The figure was tapping the glass. Not knocking. Tapping. Like it knew it didn't need to break in. Like it was enjoying the moment before it did. Then, crash! A picture frame fell from the wall behind her, shattering on the floor. She turned and screamed. But no one was there. But someone had to be. The air felt colder now, as if the storm had come inside. The rain, once outside her world, was now seeping into the house. The windows wept, the walls sweated, the hardwood floors warped beneath puddles that shouldn't exist. Drip. 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 A line of droplets was appearing on the ceiling now, leading from the attic door. And then, the string dropped. The attic door unlatched and slowly creaked. Open. She heard it, a dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled through wet insulation. Scratching followed, then silence, until a voice, whisper thin, brittle as old paper, floating down from the attic. Clara. She couldn't breathe. It knew her name. She didn't wait for more. Clara darted through the hallway, yanked open the basement door in desperation. It was the only place left to hide. She slammed it behind her, fumbling for the light. Flick. Dim yellow glow. She descended the stairs into the damp, cold basement. Old. Boxes. A washer-dryer. Broken furniture. The air was dense and sour. She found a corner and crouched, wrapping her arms around herself. Her breath was loud now. Too loud. She clamped her hand over her mouth. Thump. From upstairs. Thump. Closer to the basement door. Creak. It opened. The basement light flickered, and then she saw it. Wet footprints, coming down the stairs. 1, 2, 3. The air filled with the scent of rot and something burnt, like wet ashes and hair. The footsteps stopped halfway down. The light flickered again, then held. The staircase was empty. She squinted, barely able to breathe. But then, slowly, a hand appeared, gripping the railing. Thin, rotten. Fingernails, missing. Then the other hand. The figure descended the last steps, but backward. Legs bent the wrong way, the neck twisted, tilted at an impossible angle. And that same voice, right behind her ear. "Do you remember me now?" Clara screamed. And everything went black. Clara's scream echoed through the walls, swallowed by the storm raging outside. When her eyes snapped open, the basement was bathed in a dull red glow, emergency power, barely illuminating the chaos. She was no longer in the corner. She was in the middle of the floor, lying on her back, and something had drawn a circle around her in wet footprints. Her clothes were soaked, though she hadn't moved from the house. The air was thick, choking, and every breath she took tasted like mold and ash. And then, footsteps above her, dozens, like a crowd had gathered in her house. She bolted upright, heart slamming in her chest. With trembling limbs, she crawled to the edge of the basement stairs. She didn't dare go up, but she couldn't stay below. Clara slowly crept upward, each stair groaning beneath her weight. As she reached the top, the air changed. It was dead silent. Not a drop of rain. No wind. As if the world had stopped. She peeked into the hallway. Her cottage had transformed. The furniture was warped, dripping. The walls were pulsing slightly, like lungs. And along the ceiling, handprints. Hundreds of them. Some small, some massive. All of them black and wet, as if dipped in tar. The front door was open now. The rain poured in again. Muddy water covered the floor. And in the doorway, Jason. Her husband, drenched, shivering. "Clara," he said, voice hoarse. "Why didn't you answer? I've been knocking for hours." Tears welled in her eyes. She ran toward him, but stopped cold. Jason was dripping blood from his ears, and his eyes were hollow, completely black. "You let it in," he whispered, a trickle of red spilling down his chin. "I told you never to answer the knock." He stepped forward, but melted into the water like a reflection being washed away. Behind him stood the woman, the ghost. Hair matted across her face, clothes tattered, black with rot, her hands stretched wide, cracked open from the cold. "You answered. Now you stay," the woman rasped. Suddenly, Clara's vision blurred, the house twisted, her knees buckled. She woke up, in her living room, daylight outside. The storm had passed, birds chirped. She sat up on the couch, confused. Her teacup was beside her. Everything looked normal. She blinked. Knock. Knock. Clara turned to the door. A little girl stood there smiling. Her dress was soaked, her skin pale blue. She opened her mouth and whispered. The same words as the ghost woman. You answered. Now you stay. Clara tried to scream, but her voice was gone. Her hands moved to her throat, and she felt water gushing from her mouth. Outside, the rain began to fall again. And deep in the woods behind the house, more wet footprints appeared, heading straight toward Elmridge. It started with a whisper, soft, almost melodic, beneath the thrum of rain on the windshield. Evelyn Parker tightened her grip on the steering wheel as her sedan crawled through winding forest roads. Sheets of rain obscured the view, her headlights slicing through the downpour like dull blades. She hadn't planned to drive at night, let alone during a thunderstorm, but a last-minute client meeting had delayed her return from a remote writing retreat in the Appalachian foothills. She was alone. No cars behind her, no lights ahead, just endless trees pressed tightly on either side, their shadows twitching in the wind like reaching fingers. As thunder rumbled above, the radio cut to static. Evelyn leaned forward, squinting through the rain-smeared windshield. That's when she saw it. A shape by the side of the road. A girl, barefoot, wearing a thin white dress soaked through. Her long black hair clung to her face like wet threads. Evelyn slammed the brakes. The car skidded slightly on the slick road, before coming to a halt. When she looked again, the girl was gone. Her heart pounded. Did I imagine her? Shaking, she rolled down the window a few inches. The cold air rushed in with the scent of damp earth and something else, like mildew and decay. Then came the whisper again. Not from the radio, not from outside, from the back seat. Evelyn froze. Slowly, she turned her head. No one was there. Breathing hard, she locked the doors and accelerated. The tires hissed against the flooded road as she tried to steady herself. She reminded herself that exhaustion can play tricks on the brain. That's what it was. Fatigue. But 10 minutes later, the headlights flickered, the engine sputtered, the car began to slow. No, not now, she muttered, slamming her palm against the dashboard. The engine died. She was left in utter darkness. The only sounds were the pounding rain and the rhythmic tick of the hazard lights. Evelyn sat frozen, unsure whether to laugh or cry. She reached for her phone. No signal. Not even a single bar. That's when she heard it again. Tap. 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 On the passenger window. She turned slowly. The girl was there, face pressed against the glass. But she wasn't breathing. Her eyes were pale and dead, and her mouth moved soundlessly. Then, she whispered, loud enough for Evelyn to hear despite the glass between them. Let me in. The window fogged with each breathless word. But it wasn't Evelyn's breath. The whisper was no longer coming from outside. It was behind her again. Evelyn screamed and spun around in her seat, heart hammering, eyes wide with terror. The back seat was empty. No breath. No figure. Nothing. But the whisper, "Let me in," lingered in her ears like an echo stitched to her very nerves. Her trembling fingers fumbled to restart the engine. Once, twice, nothing. The car remained lifeless, cold as the drenched road. The rain outside grew harder, like fists pounding against the metal roof. Lightning struck a tree in the distance, illuminating the woods for a brief second. And in that second, Evelyn saw movement. Figures. Multiple. Pale shapes slinking between the trees, hunched and twitching, their limbs too long, too crooked. She locked eyes with one of them before the darkness returned. Then, bang. Bang! Bang! The passenger side window shuddered under the weight of invisible fists. Evelyn screamed, grabbing her phone again. Still no signal. The flashlight barely pierced the shadows, revealing fog creeping up the inside of the windows, like the car was being swallowed from within. Whispers rose again, from all around her this time. Not words, just sounds, slippery, inhuman. Then came a new voice, clearer, firmer, from within her own head. You shouldn't have stopped. You shouldn't have seen her. She gasped and dropped the phone. The flashlight rolled under the seat, casting eerie shadows that danced like specters in a storm. Desperate, Evelyn pushed the door open and ran into the rain. Water soaked her instantly, the cold like knives down her spine. But the fear chasing her was colder. She sprinted toward the forest's edge, thinking maybe she could. The hands clawed at the edges of the mirror like something drowning in mercury, dragging out the figure inside. It was her. Same clothes, same tangled hair, same tear-streaked face. Except for the eyes. The reflection's eyes were pure black, bottomless voids with flickers of lightning trapped inside them. Evelyn staggered back as the mirror double fully stepped into the chamber. The whispers surged louder, no longer abstract but chanting. Dozens of voices, then hundreds. Let her in. Let her stay. Let her forget the light of day. The double tilted its head. You're not supposed to be here, it said, but its mouth didn't move. The words were inside Evelyn's mind, sticky and cold. She turned and sprinted down the side of the chamber, kicking bones aside, searching for a way out. But every corner curved back into the same room. The space was shifting, warping. She screamed at the walls, but the sound was eaten by the rain. Suddenly, a memory. Her mother, years ago, whispering over a silver locket. If you ever get lost, speak the rain's name. The locket. It had fallen during the storm. Evelyn whirled around and faced the mirror. Who are you? She demanded, her voice cracking. The double stepped forward. I'm the silence after the scream, the breath before the drown. I am what the rain remembers. Evelyn clenched her fists. Then remember this. I don't belong to you. She grabbed a shard of bone and hurled it at the mirror. It cracked deeper, but the figure didn't flinch. Instead, it whispered something, and the walls bled. Not metaphorically, thick, black water poured from the stone, seeping across the floor. From it rose other reflections, twisted versions of people, some missing faces, others crawling with centipedes, all dragging themselves toward her with jerking, unnatural motions. Evelyn backed to the center of the chamber, her heart thundering in her chest. That's when she heard it. Real thunder, above. A faint voice calling her name. She screamed back. I'm here! The double froze. Then it lunged. Evelyn threw herself to the ground. The reflection's claw slashed through the air where her face had been. She rolled, grabbed a jagged rock, and drove it into the mirror thing's chest. It hissed, but didn't bleed, only hissed steam. Suddenly, light. A hole opened above her. The storm had loosened the earth. A rope was dropped in. Voices. Human. Real. Evelyn looked up. Looked. Back down. The mirror was cracking. The other figures dissolved like mist in sunlight. But her double remained, smiling. You'll be back, it whispered. The rain never forgets. Evelyn grabbed the rope. As she was pulled out, the chamber crumbled below her. The mirror, shattering into a scream. She emerged into the stormy night, gasping, sobbing, shaking. The rescuers, park rangers, stared at her, wide-eyed. You fell into a sinkhole, one said. But there was no rain in the forecast. No storm cell for miles. She looked at the trees, still, dry. The sky, clear. Only her clothes were wet. She stared down at her reflection in the puddle near her feet. It smiled first. Evelyn didn't sleep for days. After the rangers pulled her out, she was taken to the hospital, examined, and deemed physically unharmed, but showing signs of extreme shock. She told them about the underground chamber, the mirror, the voices. They wrote it off as hallucinations caused by trauma and isolation. No one believed her. But she knew what she saw. And worse, she knew it wasn't over. Even under clear skies, she heard it. At night, in the silence of her bedroom, a faint dripping sound echoed through her apartment, even though all the faucets were dry. Puddles appeared on the floor. Mirrors fogged on their own. And her reflection, it blinked half, a second too late. The fifth night home, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, heart pounding. She touched the glass. Cold. Too cold. Her reflection didn't smile. It grinned. Then it whispered, "You left me behind." The mirror cracked from the inside. Evelyn ran. She booked a hotel. No mirrors, no glass, no windows. But the rain followed. That night, a torrential downpour began, drumming on the roof like fists. She woke up at 2:47 a.m. to water streaming down the hotel walls. The television turned on by itself. A distorted voice crackled through. "You're not done. You're not done." She tried to flee, but the hallway had changed. The floor was submerged. The lights flickered with every thunderclap. And at the end of the hallway stood her reflection. Soaked, eyes black, head tilted. Behind it, dozens of other drenched figures watched, unmoving. She turned and bolted for the stairwell. Each step down led her deeper, not out. Stone walls, moss, wet air. She wasn't in the hotel anymore. She was back. Back, in the underground chamber. Only this time, it was different. The chamber stretched endlessly. The bones were gone, replaced by faces, dozens of them, trapped behind the mirror walls, pressed against the glass, staring, screaming silently. Her own reflection stood in the center, arms open, smiling, like a host welcoming her home. "You are the whisper now," it said. "You belong to the rain." Evelyn backed away, only to feel hands grab her ankles. The ground was water. It pulled, dragged, sank her. Her final breath was a scream, but underwater, it became a whisper. The next morning. Police found her hotel room empty, no signs of struggle, only a puddle on the floor. In it, a faint reflection, not matching the angle of the light. They say if you listen closely during a thunderstorm near that hotel, you'll hear a woman crying through the drains. Some say she's still lost, between the worlds. Some say she never left the rain. But those who hear the whisper, they don't sleep through the night. And mirrors never feel the same again.